Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Get Certified Together series. Now, in this week's episode, we will be covering well-architected tool provided by AWS. Now, this tool is free of cost, and you can use it to create a well-researched, documented design around the application which you want to migrate onto the cloud. Whole purpose of the tool is you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You need to do a research by yourself. They provide 6 pillars, which we mentioned in the previous episode as well, and for each pillar there are specific design principle. One of the pillar and design principle will be covering today in this week's episode, and rest of them will be covering in the next week episode. Why we'll be covering only one of the pillar? Because I also want to cover in today's episode how I recertified myself in CompTia. Now, I told you in previous episode as well that I have recertified myself not by giving an examination, but taking the training and, of course, giving an offline examination, which was non-proctored, and I only had to solve all the questions which they gave to me. Only catch was it need to be 100%. So there was no scope of missing even a single question. So it was around 100 or 120 something, and I have to pass, I have to clean all of them. So yeah, I'll be covering both of these in today's episode, and it will be slightly longer as well because well-architected framework tool is the initial discussion around that is tiny bit longer, and of course one of the pillar which I mentioned which we'll be covering today as well. So it will be tiny bit longer compared to other episodes. So bear with me. And before we move into our main episode, if you like our content and if you really think that this is something which is helping you guys, then of course like and subscribe. And wherever you are listening to your podcast, means it's audio or video, doesn't matter. Just subscribe me or just follow me, and then of course that's how we grow and we get certified together. All right. So after this break, we will be going to our main episode. All right, welcome back. So let's start our discussion around CompTia first. So I got my CompTia recertification mail around 6 months back. I think they send this auto mail warning that your certification is due to expire, and before expiry date, which was somewhere I think in June first week, I need to get myself recertified. One of the mail which came later, because moment I saw it, I was like, should I go for it or should I continue? Means I get my certification in something else instead of like recertifying myself in CompTia. Reason for that is CompTia is a nice baseline certification. So if you are new to IT and if you are new to info security, I think it's a really incredible certification. But you are already certified in it, and if you want to grow and learn more or go into more detailed certifications, then of course recertifying in CompTia I think it doesn't make sense, because I was going through the syllabus and new course structure if they have added any topics or any new information. There was few topics around data center, because of course data centers are, there is a big shift in the data center technology because of AI and everything. So there was a slightly difference in the topics which we covered in our previous journey of CompTIA. So there was new topics as well. So it was a bit exciting, but again, because it was a beginner level certification, I was a bit confused. Should I go for it or should I skip it altogether? Means let it just run through like uh, three years period and don't bother about recertifying myself. But then I received another mail where they mentioned that you can get recertified by taking a training course, and as part of that training course you have to take an examination offline again, unproctored. No one will be checking it, of course. And if you pass, like if you clear all the questions, if you finish all the training content, and if you uh, pass all the 100% question mark, then of course you will be recertifying yourself for around 3 years. So I thought means that's a good opportunity, because of course as part of training, it's not like you will just get a question paper and you need to solve it offline and no one is checking you. You first have to finish all the domains as well, only then you will get like this, you will unlock your question paper for each domain. So each domain first you have to finish all the training, and then you will get questions of that domain, and then you have to do 100% for that domain. So I thought maybe means it's a good chance, means you are learning as well, you are refreshing all the concepts, and again you are taking an examination, but not really like sitting and preparing for the full-fledged examination. It's a questionnaire which you can solve offline as well. So I of course bought this, means it was cheaper as well. I think I paid somewhere around 120 or £30 for it. So it depends on your currency, but yeah, I think I paid something like that, or maybe it's 150. I don't recall as of now how much I paid, but moment I paid it, I got this coupon which I used to bought this training course. Once I finished the training course, domain wise, one by one, I finished all the domains. And then after multiple attempts, finally I was able to do like 100%, because every time it's like a single question, you miss it, and then you have to redo all of them again. So it's not like you will get chance to maybe doing it again if you are missing one question. Means it's funny actually, because I missed that part that you have to score 100%, and I was like, I was scoring 95, 90%. I was kind of happy that this is as really easy. Means 90% is not a big deal, and of course I'll be passing the examination, because 90% should be passing marks, right? But they actually expect 100%. So that's the whole journey. Means once I finished everything, it took me like 6 to 7 hours to finally finish it off. Of course, I did it in multiple breaks as well, so giving myself break and then retry again. And finally, I was able to achieve like 100% result. Moment I did it, they said that congratulations, you are recertified. And I think in another couple of hours, I got the mail as well that you are recertified. And I'm now recertified till this is 2025, so till 2028. So another 3 years are with me, and well, I am again CompTia certified. And this is something which you can do as well, because if you really want to keep yourself certified, if it's really important for your industry in your job that you keep yourself on the latest CompTia certification, then I think it's a good, easy chance to recertify yourself. And it's not like you are not learning anything, because as part of the training course, you have to go through all the course as well. And again, the content is really amazing, because it gives you a really nice refresher on all the concepts, including encryption, including cloud, and including like data centers, what kind of storage you are using, how you can plan disposing your storage devices, how you can plan like data life cycle. Everything is covered end to end. So it's really beginner level, but it gives you a nice refresher on whole IT and info securities. I think it's a really nice certification. And if you are planning to, if you are already certified in it, and if you are getting similar kind of meal, so I really recommend that you should go for it. So that's all for CompTia. Let's move on to AWS Security Specialist, because that's our main goal for this year now. And we are starting with Well-Architected Framework. Now, Well-Architected Framework, I told you before that AWS simply doesn't want you to reinvent anything. You don't need to think and go from like zero and start figuring out like, how should I go to this AWS journey? If I have some application on-prem, how should I migrate it to AWS? No need to think from like zero and think from the baseline. This nice tool with its own lens and with its own custom documentation and recommendation, you can just follow them, and you can of course plan out how you want to migrate your application onto the AWS cloud. Now, as plan of starting onto that, you need to understand continuous improvement plan which AWS recommends. What continuous improvement plan covers is, you need to prepare, you need to review, and you need to improve. I mean, it's no brainer, right? First, of course, you need to prepare what you really want to achieve. As part of preparation phase, AWS recommend that you first identify stakeholders, discuss with those stakeholders like what's your business requirement is, what your organization requirement is, and what you really want to achieve with this new architecture or with this new design onto the AWS cloud. As part of that preparation, I think AWS recommend that you spend more time on this preparation phase, and then it will be easier going on like when you are reviewing and when you are further improving your existing design. So preparation phase means they even give the timelines as well. It's like 3 to 4 weeks you need to spend on just preparation phase, where you can plan like multiple meetings and multiple discussions with the stakeholder. Now, where this well-architected framework tool comes in picture, as part of your preparation, you can use this tool. You can use the design principle and pillars which are provided as part of this tool, and you can just use the questionnaires which is around that, built around that, your requirement, and follow your discussions around that layout which AWS provide as part of tool output. Now, for my case, for preparing for this episode, I created a scenario like I am creating a data analytics application onto the cloud. I have something on-prem and I want to migrate it. As part of AWS provided lens, I created a test workload onto the Well-Architected Framework tool. And as part of review of that workload, I got a nice report which is generated by AWS, and it have all the questions around like what kind of expectation I have around my workload and what should I do to improve it. Now, don't worry about that. We will be going into each topic, like whatever fancy terms I mentioned just now, what's a workload and what's a lens and what's a well-architected tool covers and pillars, of course. So don't worry about that. First, let's discuss more into preparation, review, and improvement. Now, after preparation phase, of course, you have to review the report, which I just now mentioned. So as part of that review process, you will review what's the outcome of the report and what you want to achieve now. What are the solutions which are coming as part of this recommendation from AWS? Now, what I mentioned in this report, you will also get recommendation from AWS as well. So what kind of solution you can use for that particular checkbox, and which solution from AWS can support it and which you can use or tweak according to your requirement. So you can do all those things as part of your review process. And last but not least is improvement. Now, improvement is another bit which AWS highly recommends because there is always a scope of improvement. And as part of this training, as part of this documentation, when I was going through, what I realized that AWS keep on mentioning this, that don't overthink, don't think like this is your only chance to deliver this project. There is always a scope of improvement, and it happened with me multiple times as well. When I'm designing something onto the cloud, there's always a scope of improvement, and it's a continuous ongoing process. Means I recall that one of the project which I did like a couple of years back, I thought that this is the final design which I placed onto the cloud, and I'm still to this date is continuously trying to improve and trying to put more and more new features and solutions onto that design. So it's an ongoing process, and AWS recommend that improvement part or improvement phase of this continuous improvement plan is as important as preparation and review. So what we are doing as part of this is we are planning around our workload. Now, in AWS terms, workload is just a generic name which they specified for any application which your organization want to build onto the cloud. Normally, if you are into the cloud side of thing already, or even on-prem, or you're working in IT, we can use workload as a generic term for any kind of infrastructure or server which is running either on-prem or onto the cloud. In this particular concept of well-architected tool and framework, workload is specifically written for any application which, irrespective of what sort of application it is, what's the purpose of that application. Ultimately, that application or that infrastructure is helping to achieve your organization some sort of goal, some sort of revenue. And what we are trying to achieve is we are trying to make sure that we prepare, we review, and we improve the design around this workload. So workload will be used pretty like generic in a way in this whole discussion, but that's another concept which we will be using as part of this couple of episodes around well-architected framework and tool usage. Why I'm discussing about workload so specifically, because if you use this tool on the console real time, you specifically have to create a workload as well. It won't cost you, it's just a generic tagging. You can specify like what type of workload you're trying to create, who is the owner of this workload, and what sort of expectation you have from this workload. Is it regional, or is it like multi-region? Is it multi-account shared, or it will be private to your personal account? All those sort of questions will be asked around when you're trying to create this workload onto the cloud. Once your workload is ready, then you go for the second phase, which is like assessment using your well-architected framework tool. So we'll be moving into that, but yeah, just understand these two concepts, continuous improvement plan and workloads. Now, once you have your workload identified and you have your this preparation plan covered, and now you are in the review phase, then you are using lens. Now, lens are nothing but AWS recommended or AWS provided solutions or questionnaires or recommendations, you can say, about your workload. So if your workload, once you've created your workload and you identify like, I want to view this workload from the lens of a data analytics application, then you provide that input in your well-architected framework tool. And as part of that WA tool, applying this lens onto your workload will give you the set of questionnaires which I mentioned. So those questionnaires will be around 6 pillars. Let me remind you those 6 pillars as well. Operational efficiency, which we'll be covering in today's episode. security, resiliency, performance, cost optimization, and sustainability. So, as part of your custom lens, you will get questionnaires around these six pillars. And for each six pillars, you will get design principles as well. And design principles are nothing but different concepts which you can apply as part of that particular pillar. And once you have this auto generated solution in front of you, you can of course get recommendations as well as part of your report, and you can use it to identify like which solution suits you best. So that's the whole point of using this AWS priority lens. You can create your own custom lens as well. I haven't tried that. I think that custom lens should be giving you opportunity of specifying which particular pillar or which particular design principle is more applicable for your type of infrastructure. So for example, maybe you are building an application more from the security point of view, and you care less about like performance, you care less about operational side of thing or even sustainability as well, but you care more about security of the application. So it doesn't matter that application goes down for a couple of hours, no one is getting impacted from security side of from end user side of thing, but what you want is that this application need to be secure always. So that's one of the customization which is required for your specific workload, and you can of course use your custom lens as well. So that's the customization you can do as well. So like I said, WA tool is open for interpretation. You are reusing previous concepts, but of course you are perform your own customization as well, because ultimately what AWS wants you to create is cover all these six pillars. We recommend it. If you don't want to cover a specific pillar because your organization or your business doesn't need it, doesn't matter, but we are providing you these recommendations. If you don't want it, then that's absolutely fine. So that's the whole point about using this WA tool. And when you use it, I was trying it and I find it really exciting because I have designed so many applications onto the cloud, so many infrastructure onto the cloud. And to be honest, if I would have known about this tool before, I would have used this before as well. But well, better late than never. I'll be using it from now on, and it's a nice tool, and you should get your hands on this tool as well. Now, as part of today's episode, we will be covering one of the pillar, which is operational efficiency. Now, operational efficiency is covered first as part of the training which I was going through. So there's no brainer that I was going in the sequence as well. And it's not like it is more important than others. All are equal. And if you feel like this is not something relevant for your organization, then of course you can skip this part. But operational excellency, I don't think that it's something which you can skip completely, because any application or any workload which you are creating onto the cloud need to be operated as well. And even if it's not customer facing, and even if it's not that critical that you doesn't care that if it goes down for a couple of hours, like I mentioned, still it's you need to maintain it, right? You need to operate it. And I think one of the concept around security is configuration management and patching. If you don't operate it, if you don't have solutions around patching your infrastructure, how you can operate it properly. Monitoring is another solution. Means if you don't monitor your application and your workload, how you will know that something is going wrong, there is an anomaly detected, and you need to really look into from the security perspective as well. So operational efficiency is, or operational, I think they call it excellence. Yeah, operational excellence is relevant even if it's even if your workload is non-customer facing, and even if you want to keep it private within your cloud, and you don't care much about your workload, but still it need to be operated as per AWS recommendation. Now, one of the design principle which AWS recommend as part of operational excellence is coding. You need to create your workloads using infra as a code. If your application is not created using code, that means there are different scenarios where you will be customizing, or your team or your engineers will be performing some customization manually. And if something goes wrong with the application and you need to recreate the whole application again, if there are some manual customization, that means you won't be able to track what sort of changes happen and how you can bring it up back to the same normal state. So using infra as a code, using application as a code is of course no brainer again. You need to use it to make sure that your application is always recreatable, and of course it's faster to deploy as well if you are creating using code. Another recommendation AWS have is around what sort of coding changes you are doing, or what sort of changing you are doing in your application. And AWS recommend that as part of keeping your application or your workload operationally excellent, do small and reversible changes. So don't do like major rollout as part of a big change. And another key concept which they highlight is how you can simulate your application downtime. So if something goes wrong with the application, you need to test it in advance, that how you can recover it and bring it to the normal stage, because anything can happen in the live. And if you don't have it tested and simulated in the dev environment, that means if something goes wrong in the production, you might be in a situation where you don't know how you can bring your application back. So that those are like key design principles which you can use to make sure that your operational side is covered. Of course, organization also drive a lot in terms of how you want to keep your application operationally efficient, because like I said, maybe from organization or business perspective, application is not that critical, and no one cares that if it's going down, or no one cares that what kind of monitoring is placed for that application. But if it's a business critical application, and if it's tagged by organization that this need to be monitored and this need to be kept always running and always live, then of course you need to make sure that you have all the operational concepts around that covered as well. So what I said, like around incident management, around configuration management, around performance management, everything should be there, and alarm monitoring should be in place as well. AWS have solutions around that, and as part of recommendation around this pillar, I think we will be getting more information what we should be using as to make sure our application is operationally efficient. Another key concept which AWS recommend is how you are upskilling your team to maintain and manage that application. Because ultimately, if your team is not that upskilled, or if this new solution or new application is making your team overwhelmed, or if someone already know about your application but he left the organization, what you will do means that's a big question in terms of like how you can make sure your application is always operational. Even the compliance requirement, like PCI DSS have its own requirement around operational side of things, and one of the key concept around that is who you're offboarding or onboarding as part of person or engineer who is working onto your application, who is operating on your application. So even if it's a business critical application, if it's a highly secure government application, even like a normal security operation engineer or network operation engineer who is just monitoring your application, he's not doing like that person is not doing any changes in the application. They also pose some sort of risk if they are not background checked as part of onboarding process. So that's another key concept around what kind of human resource you have to manage that application, to operate on that application or workload. And in this way means even the regulatory and compliance requirement drives a lot in terms of how you want to make sure that your application is operationally excellent and efficient as they. I mean, all these compliance and regulatory requirements, they make sure that your application, and I think they also provide some sort of recommendation as well. So you can follow the recommendation part of these regulatory frameworks, and how you can make sure that your application is operated as per the recommended standard. Again, AWS just provide the generic statement. They just provide the generic recommendation, and what solution from AWS side which you can use to cover those side. Again, it's upon you, upon your business requirement and organization requirement, whether you want to use them or whether you want to use them, but it's not a priority for them. So that's the whole concept around operational excellence. In the next week episode, we will be trying to cover more pillars, and I'm sure we won't be able to cover all five in one go. It might be really overwhelming for you guys. So we'll be covering maybe a couple of them or three of them, and then subsequent episode we'll be finishing it off. So all the pillars will be covered, and that will finish our second step plan, as they call it in their official AWS security specialist study guide. So this will be our second step plan of understanding well-architected frameworks. And after that, of course, we will be diving into more interesting topics, and hopefully starting with our task statements soon, which I keep on reminding you guys that we will be having domain-wise task statement as well. Those are the real concepts around AWS security specialist examination. So that's the whole plan, and that's the whole journey we are on. And like I said, if you're enjoying it, then of course, keep listening and keep liking my content. Thanks, goodbye, and good luck.